Is Medicaid planning ethical? This is one, in my opinion, there's no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong answer. Had some debates with my man Sergio on this a number of years ago, and he said, well, Josh, you do tax planning, and Medicaid planning is just the same as tax planning. I completely disagree with that. We'll get into that here a little bit, but it's one of those things like if you're a ward of the state, which Medicaid is, you're a ward of the state, it should be up to the state to be able to have your assets pay for your benefits as opposed to leaving them to your heirs. It just seems to me, if I'm going to be a ward of the state and I have assets that I'm hiding that don't allow me to pay for my benefits, then that just seems disingenuous to me. I can't lie to you. I'm just like, wait, you got a couple $1,000,000, but because you put in an irrevocable trust 5 years ago, it's okay for you to be the ward of the state and have your fellow human being, your fellow neighbor, your taxpayer to pay for your Medicaid? I don't like it. Tax planning is the same as tax planning is just reducing your tax obligation. That's all it is. You're not taking from somebody, you're reducing your obligation. And Medicaid planning is you're reducing your obligation for Medicaid while you have this huge amount of money over here that you're shielding from it. Tax planning isn't. Tax planning is you're just literally just saying, I'm going to pay a tax at a certain rate to avoid paying a tax at a higher rate. You're not getting away from paying the tax. Anyway, so this guy, my man, Harry Margolis from the Margolis Blumen D'Agostino firm out of Massachusetts. And when I used to work out of Portsmouth, I had a couple of clients who had these guys as lawyers, this firm, and they were good. I like them, big fan. Obviously, I'm reading one, and I subscribe to their email list. Your ideas intrigue me. I'd like to subscribe to your newsletter. Whoever knows that, put that in the show notes. Who said that? Your ideas intrigue me. I'd like to subscribe to your newsletter. So anyway, my man Harry says he cites this guy from New York Times who's a New York University philosophy professor. So 2 strikes against this article. The New York Times and the New York University philosophy professor. Ugh. Anyway, he addresses this question from a woman who wrote to him. He says, between property we own and our retirement savings, our net worth is over $1 million schmackaroonies. We are debating estate planning, especially creating a trust to ensure Medicaid eligibility in the event we need long-term care. This is very common where we live. I feel, however, that it's morally wrong, placing the burden of my care on my taxpayers to save my assets. 100%. My husband feels if it can be done legally, we would be remiss if not ensuring our future. What do you think? In his response, the good professor explains that the 5-year penalty period for transferring assets to a Medicaid protection trust, and the fact the trust has to be irrevocable and unavailable to the couple. All right, so here's the issue: it has to be not irrevocable trust, irrevocable trust. All right, you can't be the grantor and the trustee. All right, you can't. You can grant it to the trust, but you can't have any ownership stake or basically day-to-day management of the trust. That's just how these irrevocable trusts are. You're literally making a gift of your assets to this trust, which has its own taxpayer ID, its own 1041 tax form, the whole thing. And you're not supposed to have anything to do with that trust. And again, that's where the issue comes. If you think the IRS doesn't realize that a lot of people setting up irrevocable trusts are basically still the trustee, even if they're not named, they know for sure. And that it should. But anyway, this guy goes on to say, he points out that there are specific policy decisions that legislatures make. The point is that the estate planning your husband is contemplating is a commonplace and accounted for in the way the system is funded. All right, so basically he's saying because the legislature has already said, hey, man, we're going to say you can't do this unless it's a 5-year time period has expired. All right, so if you have done it 3 years ago and now you need Medicaid, you can't. 5 years is what the legislator said is their rules of the road. In fact, the guy from New York University comments, the ethical failure here is not seniors engaging in Medicaid planning, but the failure of our government to provide long-term care for Americans without their first having to spend down to poverty levels. The real scandal here is that you evidently have reason to worry about not being able to afford health care at an old age, long-term care being a notable gap in Medicare coverage. In a decent society, preparing for the routine infirmities of age should not require extraordinary measures. So I guess this is, dude, we are a decent society. You know how we know that? Because I just found out USAID was funding, we are literally paying insane amount of money overseas to various countries. We were funding the Syrian guard to hold ISIS terrorists in lockup. We're funding their salaries. The Syrian guards, to hold ISIS detainees locked up. We're paying for trans stuff all over the world. The whole thing is insane. That's how decent we are. We're giving your and my money to these people. It's insanity, dude. It's insanity. This got to stop, dude. But USAID does so many good things. No, screw that. Just ban them. Stop it. Anyway, I agree with Professor, whatever his name is, or else I would not have been practicing elder law for closer to 40 years. But I would like to add a few comments. First, while I don't think the fact that the woman who wrote in and her husband have no children changes the ethics of long-term planning, it does change the practical considerations. Yeah, what I'm saying. Because these people have no kids, right? They get over $1 million. They're going to put their house in an irrevocable trust. All right. Now, the trustee, who's going to be? Their brother? I don't know. But at the end of the day, they're creating an issue for sure, because they're going to have a home in an irrevocable trust for which who's going to get the benefits of? Their nieces, their nephews? It's not a very liquid asset anyway. You going out or what, buddy? You're just griping. Go out. Anyway, so my man Harry says that's kind of a problem, because now you're living in a house that you no longer own. It's a non-liquid asset, and your trustee isn't a direct heir. It's just, it might be an heir, but it's certainly not a direct kin. I don't know if it's the right word. But anyway, let's see. They likely have less interest in saving their estate for the next generation, have more need to access the resources, since they will not be able to rely on their children 100%. So because they're like, I'm going to put all this stuff in an irrevocable trust, that's going to be harder to access those resources when they need access to the resources, because they're worried about long-term care 100%. Second, even those seniors with children and grandchildren rarely protect all their assets in a Medicaid trust. Most, if not all, of our clients seek a middle ground. All right, they cover some of their health care and long-term care needs, but they also want to keep some of their money as well. This is because both they want to pay their fair share, and due to the Medicaid rules, they have to transfer some assets to the Medicaid trust. To transfer all their assets could leave them high and dry when they need funds to pay for anything, whether for their care, vacations, house repairs, or new car. Our clients often take steps to protect their homes, which are not so liquid in any case, and assume they'll use their savings if care need be. 100%. That's a whole other thing. They're saying, look, we're going to spend down our liquid assets, but we're going to protect our house in order for a house to go down to our kids and grandkids. I get that. Again, is it ethical? I'm not saying it's not ethical. I'm just not. I don't like the idea of being a ward on the state when you have millions of dollars in your net worth. I don't like it. But we don't have millions of dollars. We transfer to an irrevocable trust. Well, it's still going to bypass the pay for Medicaid, and as such, it's still going to go to your kin. And I don't know. You're relying on the taxpayer to pay for your stuff. You'd never go to your neighbor and ask your neighbor, say, hey, pay for my long-term care so I can pass my house to my kids. Third, Medicaid rules provide significant protections to spouses of nursing home residents. Hey, no. They can often take steps to protect their assets when a need for long-term care arrives, and do not need to take steps in advance. All right, so Medicaid rules provide significant protections to spouses of nursing home residents. That's good to know. So as Professor states, the policies that provide for this have been thought through by Congress and the state legislatures. And fourth, while it's risky for solo agers, those with no family members to rely on to protect assets in irrevocable trusts, doing so involves some risk to everyone or anyone. Having to rely on Medicaid to pay for care can limit your options 100%. In fact, some seniors are forced to go to nursing homes because they cannot afford to pay for anything but Medicaid, because they've given all their assets to an irrevocable trust. Most would prefer to have funds available to pay for care at home. I could not agree more. For many commentators who have compared Medicaid planning to tax planning, while it's unethical to cheat the tax authorities, few question the ethics of taking standard measures to reduce income or estate taxes. Yeah, I agree with that. But again, when you're reducing taxes, you're not, I hate to say skipping out on obligations. Again, this is a tough one for me. I get it. I get the idea that is ethical, and I get the idea like you should pay your own way. I kind of like the middle ground. Like, look, I'll put my house in an irrevocable trust so that I can pass to my kids, but at the end of the day, I'll spend down my liquid assets for Medicaid, Medicare, or not Medicare, for long-term care. It seems reasonable to me, frankly. But I don't know. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I just find it very interesting, and as such, you need to seek a competent estate planning counsel for this stuff for sure. I'm not a lawyer. I don't practice. You know what I'm saying? I just know enough to say, hey, this is beyond my expertise. Go see someone who knows. And these guys are great. I mean, again, I've had clients who dealt with these guys. They don't know who I am. They probably would disown me if they knew my crazy conspiracy points. But something to think about. All right. Love your thoughts. God bless and paw. Bark at that like button, like knucklehead there.